Hi, this is Esther with Discover Your Origins. In this video, we're going to look at another child of Martha Langford. And the next child we're going to look at is Nancy Rebecca Harman. But if you notice in this child list, there are two Nancy Rebecca Harmans. They have different birth and death dates. And so we're going to see if these are the same individuals and which one is correct. It is possible that they did have a child named Nancy, born after James, and that child died. I mean, we can ignore this potential death date here. And then they had another child that they would then name after the deceased child. That was a very common practice in England. You'll see it in French Canadian records, but I haven't seen it very often in families that lived in the southern states. I have seen it very rarely, but most often, if you do see something that appears to be a potential duplicate, there's a couple of scenarios that are more likely for families in the southern states. One is that a child has been incorrectly linked to the family. And the other is that they are the same person, but the information on one of the profiles is wrong because it doesn't have sources. It was just entered by somebody. Very likely, I suspect that these two are probably the same person. But we're going to look at the two profiles side by side and then see if we can't figure out which one is correct. So let's go ahead and get one of these profiles up and then we'll put them side by side. All right, so here are the two Nancy Rebeccas. And of course, the first thing that I notice is that the birth and death dates are different. And so that makes you think they are probably two different people. But we're going to take a closer look. And you notice that there are some sources for the birth dates. And so we're going to look and see what those are. In this profile, Nancy Ann, it just has census records. So the birth year is probably right, but the actual dates are questionable because we don't have any records here that support it. And it's the same on this other side here. Let's see. Yeah. In fact, we've got one that is potentially a question here named Sally Corley. And these are all for a Nancy after she's probably been married to a person named Corley starting in 1870. And on the profile on the left is Nancy Harman as probably a child. So that's a bit of a question there. So could this profile on the left be Nancy as a child and the one on the right be Nancy as an adult? So we're going to take a closer look and see if that's possible. But let's look at the profiles a little bit more. So the death here on the left says 1906, but there's no sources. And the one on the right has a death date, but also no sources. So both of that information is questionable and could probably not even be considered. And also this date here, 12 June 1850. It's hard to say. We've got one that says 1851, one that says 1854. And so we have a possible range for the birth year of 1850 to 1855. So we're going to keep an open mind, but I think as far as the dates go, we need to just ignore them because there's no records to back them up. So let's scroll down and look. Okay, so on the left, there's no spouse. We've got her with her parents, and that is it. So the only two sources attached to this profile on the left is the two census records. Now there is a collaboration note here, but it's pretty much doesn't mean anything. In fact, it probably could be deleted because it's pretty much meaningless. So that doesn't help us at all either. Here are the two sources. And actually this says 1860 twice, so we might need to look at that. Okay. John Harman and Henry Harman. So that it does match the family that we have been working with before. And then we've got another Nancy Harman. And It's the same census. So it's really unusual to have duplicate sources attached in Family Search. I imagine they were probably served up as separate record hints. I have seen that happen occasionally, but it's a little bit odd. So these two sources for the birth year is really only one, 1860. Yeah. Okay, so we've got some questions on the left. Now on the right, we have 3 potential sources, and we already looked, and they were 3 census records from starting in 1870. So, and if we scroll down, we see that Martin Harrison Corley is a spouse, and he's there in Lexington. He's born there, he dies there. He's got 14 sources attached to him, so he's pretty well documented. We may need to look at him a little bit more as we dive deeper. And then we've got a marriage year of about 1870, which could be possible. If she was born in 1855, she would have been about 15 years old, and 20 if she was born in 1850. So it's not outside the realm of possibility. We've got several children here, and to dig a little deeper, we may have to go and look at some of these children, which may be for a later video. But we have to think of whether or not Nancy married a Martin Harrison Corley. How do we figure that out? So one thing that I did to kind of help sort out which one is the most likely correct, and it's looking like they're probably the same person, but other than the name difference and the date differences. As I went to Ancestry, you can see I kind of started looking a little bit. And I added her profile and immediately got 3 record hints. And so when I go and look and see what those are, we've got the 1880 census, and it's suggesting to me that Nancy Corley is married to a Martin Corley. Now, I've got to have some other correlation before I can accept that record hint. But the reason that record hint is given to me is because other people in Ancestry have probably created a tree where they have connected Nancy Harman to Martin Corley. But I'm going to hold off on adding that one right away. I want to look at some of these others. So here's 1870, again, Nancy Corley, so that's when she's married. And we'll look at that one in a minute. This 1860 census is one that I want to look at. It's got John Harman as a father and Anna Harman as a sibling. So if we go and we look, we've got an Anna D. Harman here, and her father is John Harman. And so we want to look at this census a little bit closer. And one thing that I want to see in the census is Corley family next to the Harman family. So before I dive into that, let's go and look, because in 1860, Martin is going to be around 10 years old. And it says he's born in Lexington, so he should be in Lexington County somewhere, hopefully in 1860. And if we scroll down and look, here's his parents. There's been a lot of records attached, so I'm just going to accept that that's probably correct. I've looked at it, and it's probably right that those are his parents, and they're in Lexington County. So is it possible that this Joel Corley family is near the John Harman family? So that's what we want to look for in the 1860 census. And if they are neighbors, then the likelihood that they are married is higher. So we've got a Samuel Corley household. You can see that here on this page, right next to the John Harman family. And it would be curious to see, I would imagine the Samuel Corley is probably related. But we're going to look, and we're going to go to the next page. Here's a Reuben Corley. So they're definitely Corley neighbors. Okay, so we got Corley, Kaufmans, Banks, Efford. Okay, here's Joel Corley. Okay. And Judith. And if we look, here's Martin. It says he's 12 years old, which is within the realm of possibility. When they give ages in the census, we can't take it literally. Sometimes there's just an estimate. In this case, 10 to 12 years old, it would be a match. Born in Lexington. So, with them only a few households apart, the likelihood that Nancy and a Martin Corley would have interacted and eventually married is pretty high. I mean, let's be real. Okay, and then she says she's 5 years old she's 5 years old in the 1860 census would give her 1855 approximate birth date. If her actual birthday is 1850, that would still be okay. It would still be within range of Martin and Nancy probably knowing each other and getting married. So what does that mean? I'm going to close this here and we'll go back to our family search. So doing this evidence analysis on the two Nancy profiles. So let me go back here to this Nancy. It makes me think that these two profiles are for the same person. There is, of course, some conflicts here that we have to resolve because we don't have evidence for the dates that have been entered. We sort of have a suggestion of a relationship between Martin Corley and Nancy Harman based on proximity. Don't have really any other records. And so what I'm going to do, and maybe this is a little controversial, but I'm actually going to put these two profiles together because based on what I can see so far, they are duplicates. And so I am going to merge. I'm going to make this Nancy Rebecca Harman one the primary one and merge this other one in. So I'm going to do this by clicking on the person ID here. And then on the one that I want to survive, I'm going to click on merge by ID. And I'll make this one bigger here. Merge by ID. And then I'll paste in the user ID or patron ID. All right, now there's a lot of red flags here because Family Search is saying that they're not, things don't match, years are off, and that's okay because we're going to go in and clean that up and make it right. You can see both of these profiles were added in 2012. So these were duplicates when Family Search, as we know it, started. Family Search migrated data from what they call the new Family Search to this version, and that happened in April of 2012. So these have been duplicates for a very long time, and we're going to clean it up. All right, so doing a side-by-side comparison of the two profiles, it's going to move over these two census records, or this census record hint here. And there's not really a whole lot that's going to come over. We're not going to worry about updating the names or the dates because we don't really know if those are true, but we're going to say yes, continue. And I'm not going to move over any of this other stuff because we have no evidence for any of it. So we're just going to go ahead. You can do a side-by-side if you want, but we'll just hit continue. And we're going to say, we're going to write an explanation because there is a problem with record conflicts. And so we're going to just say there are some conflicts. And I'm also going to add that additional evidence or additional records are needed. I know that merging records when you're not 100% sure is a little scary, maybe not completely advised. Sometimes in Family Search, it's better to just leave things if you're don't feel very confident. I feel somewhat confident that this is the right direction. If there were two Nancys, then I would say the second Nancy can be added. but I don't think they are. So now we've got to deal with the birth and death information because we don't really know where this has come from. So when we look at the records that are attached, there's no evidence. And so we are actually going to change this, and I'm going to say that she was born about 1855. Now, we do know that she was born in Lexington County based on the earlier census records. So I am going to add Lexington County as a place, and then we'll save. Okay, now the death, there is no sources. We had two different sources before, and maybe with a little bit of digging on Find a Grave, we can possibly get a date and have it sourced. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. One of the things is if you have incorrect information or possibly incorrect information, the record hinting system doesn't work right because it's trying to match with whatever that information is. And so if there are no sources for that date, sometimes you're better off removing it in hopes that you get a hint later that is correct. And we'll look and see if we can eventually find a record for her death. The chances are that she was probably died in South Carolina is really high, but we don't really know for sure. And there was that one record hint for Georgia. So I'm going to take that out as well, which will make her just deceased. And then we'll hit save. Okay, so as we continue to work on this person, we're going to use Ancestry as a tool and add records as we go. Okay, so I have added Martin and some children based on the census, and we've got a profile started here in Ancestry. And in fact, I might actually look at the children right now and see what record hints are available for the children. So I'm going to do that off camera and just kind of take a little bit a closer look. And if I see anything interesting, I'll be sure to share with you. So just hang on and we'll be right back. Okay, so I took a minute and looked through the Corley children here. I was hoping to find some kind of record that names their parents. So, for example, a death certificate or marriage record or obituary where they say Robert Lee Corley's parents are Martin Corley and Nancy Harman. And just my quick little checking here at the moment, I've not been able to see anything. Some other records or evidence are needed to help tie this couple and family together a little bit better. Now, the records that are currently attached show Nancy Corley and them living together as neighbors, helps. I just want to be able to tie them a little bit closer. So, for example, I need to look at the 1870 census here and see how close they were living to the Harmans. And I suspect that the Corleys end up in Georgia because a lot of their children are in Georgia, but I'm not sure. And this Sally Corley here says she's born in Georgia and they're living in Cullman, Alabama, which I suppose is possible. I need to look at it a lot closer and see if this Sally and Nancy are the same individual. I'm not sure about that because our previous death date was 1885, which would mean this Sally is a second marriage. Let's actually go and look at the census record because if she did die in 1885, she shouldn't be in the 1900 census. And it's possible that Sally's a nickname. It is a nickname for Sarah, usually. But let's just look here. Okay. So we've got Martin H. Corley, married to a Sally. We've got birth year 1849, 1850. And this column, I believe, is years married. Let's see, number of years married. Yep. And then mother of how many children? So this says they've been married 30 years, which would make 1870 the approximate marriage year, and then 10 children. And these children match up, I think, with the children that are listed in Family Search. So I'm going to have to take a lot closer look at that. So I'm going to take a lot closer look at the 1900 census, because then that would mean that Nancy did live until 1900 or possibly a little bit later. If they're in Coleman, Alabama, then perhaps there is some kind of find a grave record or something there that we could look at. So anyway, this isn't quite done yet. I may spend some time working on Nancy Harman and looking at the children to see if I can find some other evidence to help support this relationship and this connection. But for the moment, I'm going to say this is probably the right direction, and that gives us this Nancy Rebecca Harman here. So until then, I hope this was helpful. We'll see you next time.